always believed my life was stable. I had a caring husband, Henrique, and a younger sister, Isadora, whom I had protected since childhood. My trust in them was as natural as the air I breathed. Perhaps that's why, when I discovered the betrayal, I felt suffocated. It was as if the ground had opened up beneath my feet, and I was falling into an endless abyss. It was an ordinary night that everything happened. Henrique left to work late, and I, sleepless, picked up his phone, forgotten on the couch. I hadn't meant to invade his privacy, but a notification flashed and caught my attention. When I opened it, I found messages between him and Isadora. Words that had once been mine were now being delivered to the person I trusted most, after my mother. The messages left no doubt. Vows of love, secret meetings, plans for a future together. I read and reread each sentence, hoping it was a nightmare, but the pain only intensified. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Deep down, I wanted to deny the obvious, believe it was all a mistake, but the details were too cruel to fabricate. That night, I cried until dawn. The soaked pillow carried the weight of my disappointment. I silently relived moments from my childhood, when I always sacrificed myself for Isadora. She was always my mother's favorite, the most praised, the most defended. Even so, I never stopped caring for her, never stopped believing that our sisterly bond was unbreakable. When the sun rose, I looked in the mirror and barely recognized myself. My eyes were red, my face pale, my soul in pieces. What hurt me most was not only Enrique's betrayal, but the confirmation that Isadora carried within her a silent envy, cultivated for years, and I, naive, had always turned a blind eye to it. I spent the next few days in a daze. I went to work, chatted with colleagues, but inside, I was dead. The taste of food disappeared, and the songs that once cheered me up now seemed like distant noises. Constantly, the same question echoed within me. Why? Why both? Gradually, the pain gave way to anger. I knew I had to react. I couldn't just let them go on with their lives as if nothing had happened, building their happiness on my ruins. The wound was raw, but it was also a reminder that I should no longer be passive. It was in this whirlwind of emotions that I made my first decision, to observe in silence. I wouldn't confront them right away. I would let them feel safe, let them believe I knew nothing. Only then could I understand the depth of their conspiracy and plan my revenge. My heart was broken, but a spark was building within me. For the first time, I didn't feel like just a victim. I had the power to destroy this farce, and I decided I would do it in the most painful way possible. With one last look in the mirror, I wiped away the tears and promised myself they would pay. Not just for their betrayal, but for believing they could destroy me without consequences. Before I continue, I want to ask something very important. If this story has touched you so far, subscribe to the channel now and leave a like. This helps us bring you more stories of betrayal, revenge, emotion, and liberation. And don't forget, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing how far our stories go. In the following days, I began to observe Henrique with increased attention. Every flimsy excuse, every averted glance, every sudden absence. I already knew the truth, but I wanted proof. I needed to transform my pain into something concrete, something no one could dispute, and that's how I realized how certain they were that they would never be discovered. One afternoon, I went to visit my mother. The atmosphere at home was always mixed. She extolled Isadora as if she were a princess and treated me like an ordinary, almost invisible daughter. That day, when I casually commented that Henrique was too busy, my mother smiled proudly. "He and your sister are so close. You should be grateful for that," she said, oblivious to the venom behind her words. It was like a punch in the gut. The feeling of being alone intensified. Not only were my husband and sister cheating on me, but my mother seemed complicit, even though she didn't know everything. I tried to contain my anger, but a certainty grew within me. I couldn't count on her. At that moment, I realized my war would be a lonely one. However, I had an unexpected ally. Pedro, my longtime best friend, noticed my sadness and insisted I tell him what was happening. When I finally burst into tears and revealed the betrayal, he didn't judge me. On the contrary, he listened patiently and, in the end, said, "If they want to play with fire, let's burn it all down." His words gave me strength. For the first time, I felt I wasn't completely alone. Pedro was the only one willing to stand by my side, and together, we began to think about how to weaponize that pain. He helped me sift through old conversations, pull up call logs, and even track down photos Henrique had hidden. With each piece of evidence gathered, my indignation grew. We discovered messages in which Isadora talked about our big day, mentioning details about the dress, decorations, and even the honeymoon. They weren't just cheating on me, they were planning to get married in secret, as if my existence were irrelevant. Shock turned to determination. If the wedding were truly going to happen, I would make a point of being there, not as a guest, but as judge and executioner. They deserved to have their masks fall in front of everyone. At the moment, they felt most triumphant. Still, a shadow of doubt haunted me. I was about to face not only Henrique and Isadora, but also my own mother, who would surely oppose me. I knew the battle would be bloody, and not just in words, but there was no turning back. As I read the messages again, I felt my heart harden. I, who had always forgiven, who had always believed the best in people, was now ready to destroy, and I swore it would be at the altar, in front of everyone. I began to put together the plan like someone putting together an obscure puzzle. Pedro and I mapped out steps, collected evidence, and discussed possible scenarios. He knew how to keep his cool. I knew how to keep my fury organized. A dangerous combination. With each new message we printed, my stomach firmed in conviction. It wouldn't be something impulsive. Revenge needed to be surgical and public. We gathered screenshots, audio, and recordings from restaurants where the meetings took place. I also managed to insert a flash drive with photos that Henrique thought he had deleted. Pedro used contacts to confirm dates and witnesses who were willing to speak later. Set up the test and include the reason. This way we would remember the objective without losing our reason. Each document was a blade ready to tear apart the reputation of the traitors. There were moments when I wavered. The memory of Henrique's laughter struck me like a blade. I remembered the plans we made together, the promises I believed would last forever. But the image of Isadora smiling as she planned my end erased any nostalgia. I decided then that I wasn't just looking to expose. I wanted everyone to see the falsehood. I wanted the humiliation to be proportional to the betrayal I suffered. The discovery of the pregnancy changed everything at once into something more brutal. When Pedro told me, I felt a mixture of repulsion and fear for what was to come. Isadora would use this to silence criticism. The family would cry and silence me. So we adjusted the plan. The revelation would have to counter any appeal to compassion. I prepared medical evidence and messages in which Isadora celebrated the situation with Henrique. I convinced myself that my presence at the wedding would be essential and strategic. He would be the last witness to smile for the photo before becoming the executioner. Pedro was tasked with ensuring that the dossier was unquestionable and accessible. He also made sure that I didn't succumb to tears at the crucial moment. I would have to appear calm. The fury behind my eyes would do the rest. For several nights, I mentally rehearsed how I would interrupt the ceremony. Imagining applause turning to silence was my little anticipated revenge. I thought about speeches, showing the flash drive to my mother, and causing trouble. But I knew the best option would be to let the evidence speak for itself. I planned to trigger the audio and video at the moment when the words could not be denied. There were legal and social risks, but I counted the costs before moving forward. If she were called a villain, she would bear it. She had already been betrayed by the most sacred bond. The decision became a contract with myself, truth above all else. Deep down, I also knew that letting go of the past was the only way to start over. I accepted the price: loneliness, judgment, and the definitive severing of family ties. In the days leading up to the wedding, I faked routines and smiles to deceive. I was formally invited, like a common person, and I accepted with an air of indifference. Presence would be my most potent weapon. No one would imagine that I would destabilize everything. I received condescending looks from people who would never publicly defend me. But behind the social veneer, my patience was boiling like a pressure cooker. Pedro took care of technical support, pen drive with proofs, copies for accessible press. He also sought discreet allies among some guests who knew of my pain. I was careful not to leak anything on social media before the agreed time. We needed the immediate shock, with no room for emotional manipulation of the family. The strategy: instant truth, public reaction, end of marital theater. The day before, I felt fear, cold, and a strange relief intertwined in my chest. I went through old photos and mentally burned memories that no longer served me. I asked Pedro to ensure I had a plan B in case anyone tried to silence me. I slept little, thinking about the moment when the altar would be our arena. In the morning, I took a deep breath and promised myself that when I broke the silence, I would be free. The day dawned beautifully, as if the universe was mocking the situation. Makeup, flowers, friendly voices, everything seemed to conspire against my plan. I entered the church as if I were just another guest, hiding the storm. I sat on a side bench, observing every person, every gesture, every laugh. The body trembled inside. The calm mask needed to be perfect. I saw my mother with a serene face, eyes shining with the joy of others. Beside her, Isadora looked like a bride straight out of a magazine, confident and victorious. Henrique held her hands with a smile that nauseated me to the core. The godparents, friends, and relatives occupied chairs like pieces on a board. I took a deep breath and held the flash drive in my bag as if it were a weapon. When the priest began the ceremony, every word seemed directed at me. I felt the sound of the music cut off, feeling the moment approaching quickly. Pedro was in the audience, his gaze fixed, signaling that everything was ready. My mouth went dry. The urge to run and tell him everything right there ran through me, but I remained seated, waiting for the exact moment to act with precision. The time for the vows arrived, and when they heard Henrique promise eternal love, I launched my movement. I got up calmly and walked down the hall as if it were a ritual. Eyes turned to me. The buzz grew louder within seconds. I felt the silence fall over the ship like a sharp electric blade. When I reached the altar, my hands trembled for just a second. Then they steadied. I grabbed the microphone without asking permission, and the surprise turned into undivided attention. I said it simply. I said there was something everyone needed to see. I connected the flash drive to the projector someone had left for the party videos. Messages, photos, and audio files appeared on the screen that did not allow for any favorable interpretation. Each image was a sentence, each audio a hammer hitting the lie. I saw Henry's face change from flush to pale disbelief in a blink. Isadora went from a triumphant smile to a contained panic that consumed her. My mother turned pale, her hands trembling, unable to justify the unjustifiable. Some guests murmured, others simply walked away in astonishment. The priest stammered, not knowing whether to stop the scandal or let the truth come out. Henrique tried to deny it, asked for justice, called for rationality and respect, but the sequence of evidence had already sealed the credibility. The contradictions remained. Isadora cried, screamed, and then went silent, as if all the air had been knocked out of her. People I had believed to be friends approached with divided faces. I felt the public shame like a blade, but also like something that freed me. When the police and some close family members arrived at the scene, chaos grew. Henrique had to answer for words and actions that he had previously tried to hide. Isadora, humiliated, burst into tears and faced the reality she had helped to forge. My mother looked at me with pain and guilt, words stuck in her throat. I stood there, in the eye of the storm, allowing the truth to take its course. In the end, as the church emptied amidst whispers and glances, I felt something strange. The victory I imagined was bittersweet. I cut ties and caused pain to those who were once family, but deep in my chest, a lightness grew. The truth had set me free. Pedro came to me and held my hand as confirmation that I was not alone. I walked out of the church with uncertain steps, but with the conviction of someone who survived. The church gradually emptied, leaving a trail of low voices and incredulous looks. I sat on one of the empty benches, taking a deep breath, trying to understand what I was feeling. It wasn't exactly joy nor victory. It was more of a tired, heavy relief. Henrique had left escorted by an uncle, and Isadora, supported by my mother, didn't dare look at me. At that moment, I realized that what I had destroyed wasn't just a marriage, it was a castle of lies. My mother came to me with tears in her eyes, but she didn't say a word. Maybe she was embarrassed, or she just didn't know how to justify everything she ignored. I didn't say anything either. Sometimes silence is more powerful than any accusation. I got up, straightened my dress, and walked out of that place as if I were leaving captivity. The afternoon breeze touched my face with a softness I hadn't felt in a long time. Pedro was waiting for me outside, with that discreet smile of someone who understands everything without asking. He hugged me tightly, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to really cry, not of pain, but of liberation. I no longer had to carry the burden of pretending everything was okay. Pedro didn't say anything. He just held my hand as if to say, "You did it." There, I felt that a new chapter of my life was about to begin. In the following days, the repercussions were inevitable. The family was divided, and social media was abuzz. Some called me cruel, others applauded my courage, but I didn't care. For the first time, my story was being told through my voice, not their lies. Isadora disappeared for a while, and Enrique tried to rebuild the image, but nothing would be the same again. I, on the other hand, began to rediscover myself, free from guilt, free from waiting, free from the past. I went back to work, picked up hobbies I had left behind, and accepted invitations to start over. Pedro became more present than ever, and in his gaze, there was a promise of something new. We weren't a couple, but there was tenderness and respect in every gesture. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future that didn't depend on anyone but me. The wound healed, but the scar was my badge of courage. I look back now at everything I experienced and understand that that betrayal was my turning point. I lost a husband, a sister, and perhaps part of my innocence, but I gained something infinitely more valuable, myself, whole and at peace. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that no matter who tries to destroy us, when the truth is our ally, no one has the power to erase who we really are.